Welcome to EarthSayers podcast series, a program that amplifies the voices of people who care about life on Earth. This weekly series shares the voices of transformational leaders, offering conversations to deepen learning and spark action in today's challenging times. These discussions are framed by the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, from ending poverty to protecting the planet. Leaders in film, sustainability advocacy, and change agents discuss their work and the personal challenges they have met and overcome during their careers. Let's get started and enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome to EarthSayers Cinema. Today we are so fortunate to have Trevor Tejeda-Gervais to interview about his film that he recently did, The True Cost of Burning Coal, Iowa's Dirty Secret. Looking forward to seeing that trailer. So here it is.
Yeah, most people don't know that we're burning coal in Iowa. Everybody thinks that it's just 100% renewable energy because that is what MidAmerican has branded themselves as. It's just another smokestack that they drive by on the outskirts of town, and they're unaware of its impacts on their community and on themselves.
There's been a lot of cancers in my family, and we didn't realize, as far as for how much it cost us with the environment, we didn't know.
It's devastating to watch a kid have an asthma attack. It is devastating to watch people stand outside of their homes that are now just piles of twigs because weather systems have become more severe and more frequent and more dangerous for all of us.
I just want to see better for our community, and it's really hard to have hope for the future when you know that coal plants are burning in your backyard.
I've never felt more ignored in my life. It's where they don't care about the little man, and that's who we are. We are the little man, and they are the big corporation, the big conglomerate,
And if we had big pocketbooks as tribes, maybe they would listen to us more, but we don't, so the only thing that we can use is our voice to try to stop these things.
Please switch away from the coal plants. I enjoy breathing. I don't want to die from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I know what gasping for breath is. Transition sooner, because people do actually suffer due to the coal plants.
I think it's important to get involved because we have to. If you want a livable future, we have to change the way that we're doing things. And that's not going to happen unless we make them. We have to make that change.
Trevor, could you tell me what brought you to this project? What was the genesis of it? Obviously, it's needed, but what called you? Why did you step up to the plate for this one?
Yeah, definitely. So Iowa's Dirty Secret, The True Cost of Burning Coal, it started not as a planned documentary, we did not think that this was going to be a 30-minute project. I started working with some of the groups in Iowa who focus just on air quality and pollution and environmental issues in general. Groups like Iowa Environmental Council, Iowa Sierra Club, Great Plains Action Society, a bunch of great grassroots organizations who are doing really important work. And I had started working with them on a campaign called Clean Up MidAm, where they are working to get MidAmerican Energy, the main utility in Iowa, to close down their coal plants and fully transition to clean energy. What really turned it into this story was just starting to sit down with people and hearing more about the organizing work that's happening, but also just the unique nature of this particular utility company in this particular state. I don't think it's shocking when a coal company wants to burn coal or mine coal, right? That they are coal companies. Of course, that they're profit driven. I don't agree with it, but I certainly understand it. MidAmerican Energy is really interesting because Iowa is such a big producer of wind energy, and MidAmerican obviously is a huge part of that. And so unlike some other states where you've got utilities that are all in on nothing but dirty coal, in Iowa, they know that wind is great. They know it's more affordable, more reliable, and yet they still burn coal at 5 coal plants across the state. And even, just learning more about the organizing work that's happening there and how the when coal is burned, essentially what's happening is they're selling the energy to other states, but all the pollution is staying right in Iowa. That just felt like a story that we wanted to dive a little bit more into. And yeah, so that's how the project got started.
Hmm. Do you know anything about the source of that coal? Is it coal that comes from North Dakota or Montana? Is it that lignite coal?
Yeah, it's one of those states because Iowa doesn't have any active coal mines, right? I believe at one time that there were, but at this stage there are no active coal mines in Iowa. So any coal that they're burning in Iowa has to come from, one of those states further to the west, where there are active coal mines.
Right. And do you know, in terms of the pollution element, I mean, lignite specifically doesn't have much energy. It's only 35% energy, and it's got mercury, arsenic, radon. It's just like the worst example of what coal is. I mean, clean coal would be one that was at least 50% energy. But what about the tail end of this whole thing? What what are we looking at in terms of the health consequences, and what are these different groups doing? Because listen, this is a sustainable effort to, keep people healthy and keep water drinkable and air breathable.
Right. Yeah, the health impacts are really overwhelming, frankly. I think in the interviews that we conducted for this project, it's one thing to hear the numbers, right? You just went through some of those right then of, the percentages, or to just kind of name some of the things that we know are in the ground because of it, like arsenic and mercury. It would, but to actually hear one of the interviews that we did is with a doctor who works in a rural Iowa community who deals with this, right? And it's very hard to be able to say, oh, this particular cancer came from this particular coal plant, right? It's because there are other factors, but the reality is that in Sioux City, for example, in Northwest Iowa, it's the only community, Woodbury County, its county is the only county that has 2 coal plants in the entire state of Iowa. They have 2 there. Sioux City and Woodbury County also happen to have the highest asthma rate in the state of Iowa. And so we see increased asthma rates. There's certainly, there's all of these things have been tied to different respiratory problems and different cancers. But it's also just not in the air. That would be bad enough, but it's also in the water. I think one of the things that really surprised me was seeing some of the footage we were capturing, like with a drone, of how close the toxic coal ash ponds are located next to, say, the Missouri River. The Missouri River, millions of people rely on that for drinking water, for agriculture, for all these different things. And it is extremely close. And this is an area that, just in the last year or two experienced severe flooding, right? And so there aren't really nearly enough, in my opinion, protections out there for people. And so you will see stuff like mercury can leak, and there is no safe amount of mercury to have inside of your body, certainly not for pregnant mothers and for young children. And so it's just the impacts are really far reaching across the state of Iowa.
Well, it would seem in a era far away, once upon a time, that we could look to the legislature and say, well, come on, we want to regulate this, but we're not in the Teddy Roosevelt era. We're in a whole different conundrum now where it's all good and it doesn't matter, and we're here to make money. And if you want power, just turn it on and don't ask questions. So what can be done if we can't look to the legislature? Where do you see the movement, the change, the opportunities to be able to push past dirty coal, or at least mitigate the effects of the coal ash and other pollutants that go into drinking water?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the changes in the federal government and what's happening with the EPA are certainly not helpful. But also in Iowa, the state legislature hasn't been particularly interested in regulating really many industries at all, for long before we had these federal challenges, right? And so I think what we've seen, at least with MidAmerican Energy, at least in Iowa, is that if we're not able to, kind of force the right thing at the government level, is we have to really call out these companies for the decisions that they're making, right? MidAmerican Energy's coal plants are part of the Berkshire Hathaway Energy fleet, which is the largest coal fleet in the country, or the most polluting coal fleet in the country. It is the work that we have to do, particularly in Iowa, is to help regular people understand that there are coal plants burning coal in Iowa, that they are having health impacts, and also cost impacts and reliability impacts, and giving them avenues to actually bring this up to MidAmerican Energy, the monopoly utility that they are forced to purchase their energy from, because what MidAmerican Energy will do is they'll send out these kind of glossy mailers in their utility bills and say, they just said this recently, like, last year we created all of our energy was renewable. We 100% renewable energy. And the way they calculate that is to say that, well, our wind generation was enough to meet the total demand over time of what I was using. It makes it sound like, to any normal person, that they don't burn coal. Or that they don't even burn gas, right? Which is it's simply not true. And so we have our work cut out for us, but the avenue for change is to call out these companies who know that the look of coal is not good. There's a reason why they put their logo up on the wind turbines and they don't put them up on the coal smokestacks, right? There's a reason why. And so they don't want to talk about this. Our job is to force that conversation and give more, just residents and Iowans the knowledge that they need to advocate to this company, to make this change. And it's a much easier change to make for MidAmerican than it would be for other utility companies, because they already have all of that wind. And so just the fact that they have all of that clean energy creation, they know it works, they know it's better, they know it's more affordable, but they're still not willing to retire these coal plants. And the last public thing that they said is that they'll retire them in 2049. That simply doesn't make any sense. It makes bills more expensive. It's leading to more asthma, leading to more cancer. And we have to put more pressure on these companies.
Well, the problem goes beyond Iowa, just as the Missouri River goes beyond Missouri, and as does the Mississippi. Once these things go into the river, the problem is downstream, and is it now out of sight, out of mind? But it's beyond Iowa. Actually, Berkshire Hathaway, I didn't know. I was kind of surprised because they have a pretty squeaky clean reputation. They seem like they have a reasonable leader. That it's in Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Iowa. And they are the dirtiest coal plants in the U.S., and it all comes down to not wanting to put scrubbers in. And so they did a cost analysis, and what they did was they so dramatically overestimated the cost of putting the scrubbers in. It's like, oh, we can't afford that. Well, that's because you jack the numbers up. In fact, if they had to, they would, and they wouldn't go out of business. They would be fine. But as I understand it, some of the problems related to the mill tailings and the pollutants that go into the water have a bigger impact on minority communities. In fact, there's a big impact. I'm not sure if it's from the coal plant in Iowa, but there's one in Nebraska that has a big impact on North Omaha, where there's a significant Black population. Now, I don't know what's going to become of that, because I understand they have a new mayor who is Black, and he is from Omaha, and people really love him. Maybe he can make some kind of difference, but, a great guy against, a gargantuan, corporation with billions in assets, it's pretty tough. And then I guess the other point is that the Winnebago tribe, which are they in Nebraska? Are they in?
They are in Nebraska. Yeah.
Okay. So then it's like, well, it's not just an Iowa problem. It's a regional problem. Just as the air pollution doesn't stay, the tailings, that coal ash doesn't stay, and and away it goes with the water. So this turns into a bigger problem. So I don't know what the people that you interviewed before are thinking in terms of just keep trying to hammer on Berkshire Hathaway or legislate, or where's the sustainability in terms of the movement to be able to redress some of these problems?
Yeah, and I think the answer is all of the above, because at this point there are so many different levers that we need to pull. There's the corporate accountability, which is a big piece of this with MidAmerican Energy itself, but also with Berkshire Hathaway Energy, as you said, regionally and kind of across the country. That is a bigger problem. We need kind of leaders on both sides of the Missouri River to be advocating for this. That's why we featured Sunshine Thomas Bear in our documentary, who is a member of the Winnebago Nation, which is on the Nebraska side of the Missouri River, but downstream from those two coal plants we discussed earlier. And so, what we need is to continue to kind of spread awareness and to make sure that we do have more allies, not just mayors, which certainly are very important, right? But start just educating people in general around this. You brought up scrubbers. As we know, there's no amount of scrubbers you can put on a coal plant to make coal not dirty, right? You can call it clean coal if you want. That's just not how it works. And that is also why there's a reason that coal plants are not located in very wealthy neighborhoods, right? Or like sought after places to live, because those places don't want to look at or breathe in coal pollution. And so even if you were to install those, it doesn't actually solve that problem. The other issue that we have is just kind of the structure that a lot of utilities have in Iowa and in most places that have these kind of state-sanctioned monopoly utility companies. They're able to bill customers for improvements or repairs that they're making on their generation. If Berkshire Hathaway Energy or MidAmerican Energy were required to fully own the costs of keeping these coal plants propped up, they would have closed them years ago. It's way too expensive. It doesn't make any sense. They need far too extensive repairs to keep these things running, but they can just bill those back to the ratepayers, and so it doesn't really matter to them because it isn't impacting their bottom line. And so that's another change we have to look at, I think, over time, is how do we make sure that we're not incentivizing these companies to prop up these outdated coal plants and allowing them to charge customers for it.
And there's a whole conundrum here. They privatize the profits, but socialize the costs in terms of pollution and health. And then I'm not sure if this is also a factor, but in many instances, they get some big tax break or something like that. It's like they don't get charged a reasonable amount for the damage that they're doing. And I don't know how this could get redressed. I mean, I don't know that there's a possibility for class action suits in situations like this, and what would happen. But I mean, what if people are being poisoned by mercury or arsenic or radon and all these things there? What options do they have? They say obviously they could supply energy without those coal-fired power plants. And I actually know that in Wyoming, some of the plants are being switched to is it nuclear? Some of the infrastructure that they have is going to go to nuclear because they already have it. They already have it there. So there are options for change, but nobody likes change, but nobody likes to have their family poisoned either. So yeah. What are the options here? Where do you see the opportunities for change?
Yeah, the biggest opportunities for change, I think, are helping people to understand not just the specifics of pollution of coal, or even the existence of coal plants, which also this is a thing. This was a real problem that we had when we started talking to people. We realized that a lot of folks just didn't know that Iowa had coal plants at all. Even people who lived 15 minutes away from one, they just thought it was some other factory that was manufacturing something. They had no idea that it's a place that burns coal. They received a mailer that said it's 100% clean energy. They thought it was clean energy, and that of course, is not the case. So some of this is just, keeping the people informed. But I also think, certainly, I care a lot about the environment. I care a lot about clean air, clean water. I know that we don't always get everyone with that argument, but we're seeing more and more people get frustrated by big greedy corporations who are taking advantage of our health and our bills and things like that. I think that's another angle here. These monopoly utilities get this guaranteed rate of return where, it depends on the utility, but let's say 9 or 10%, let's say that is their guaranteed rate of return. No matter what, that's the money that they get to make. Name another industry that gets to do that. Name any job that any normal person can have where you guarantee each year your company is going to have that 9 or 10% uh, rate of return, that growth that they're going to get, regardless of what happens, right? It doesn't matter if you had a particularly good year, bad year, good quarter, bad quarter. You just get that guaranteed profit, and that is how these are structured. And I think that we can get more. We don't focus on that a whole lot in the documentary, but I think that is one of the arguments that we can make for folks who are maybe not as sold by the environmental argument, but are more amenable to an argument about these greedy corporations that are taking advantage of us.
Yeah, I think it's a really great case for corporate welfare. It really is. I mean, they're taking advantage of every situation. They're having lobbyists write the legislation, and then they line the pockets of the people that will vote the way that they want to vote, and they say it's good for business. It's like, well, not if you're drinking poisoned water. I mean, what business is it of the legislature to determine how much poison people that they don't even know can take on in their life, and then the tail end consequences of cancer, asthma, heart disease, diabetes, everything related to it, because mercury, it's a poison.
Yep, exactly. And no one can argue otherwise. Well, and there are these profits, but those profits aren't going to these communities, right? That's the other piece of this. These are increasingly, like, coal plants are not employing a huge number of people, and it's not that these investments are really staying in the community. This MidAmerican Energy is owned by Berkshire Hathaway Energy, which is a giant company with a huge stock cap, and so yes, like if you're able to.
It's like colonization, really. And it's like, we're going to go here, we're going to extract what we want. And, that's okay. It's good for us. And you get something, but, you'll find out the other details later on.
That's right. And there's the missed piece as well. Unlike, if you once you're done kind of manufacturing a wind turbine and you get it placed, it's kind of done, right? It's monitored and there's rules for that and everything. But it's kind of all set for these coal plants. They have to bring in a lot of coal via train. And one of the people that we did talk to lives in Ottumwa, Iowa. It constantly sees these trains, and when it's windy, like the coal dust will just blow into all these neighborhoods, into their park. So yes, if you live near a coal plant, it's going to impact you, absolutely. If you live on this planet, of course, it's going to have those climate change impacts that we know about. But also, if you just happen to be along the train line, you might just have coal dust blown into your community. It just doesn't make any sense. In the 70s or 80s, if there were no other options, this was the only way that you're able to generate electricity, maybe you make the argument, right? Now we know we have other options that are more affordable and more reliable. We just have to force these companies to make a change.
Well, it seemed like for a while the coal was really disappearing because natural gas was cheaper. Now, I think the only argument is it's not going to be a legislature, and it's hard to imagine that Berkshire Hathaway is going to be shamed into consciousness that these plants could not be at least converted to natural gas, which has a footprint, but not as significant in terms of the pollutants that come out of it. Is that even an option? I mean, all the gas would come from the United States. We're exporting it to Europe and everywhere else. Could these be converted? Is this even a potential argument?
Yeah, I think it's an argument probably that we might see from the utility company in particular. And you're right that coal plants across the country have been closing. There's no way to really save coal plants. They're just not economical. It doesn't make sense anymore because of gas and because of renewables, right? Both of those are significantly cheaper resources. And so, they can be the President Trump can do any orders he wants to. It's not going to change the basic economics of coal. Already we're not charging these companies for all the air pollutants and water pollutants. They're already getting off on that one for free. It still is not affordable. So I think we'll continue to see that. I think though, like particularly in Iowa, they are the best state to generate wind in the country, right? Just because of how the wind
Pretty
blows,
good. Pretty good too, and
Yeah.
it's a big coal. I mean, a gas state, but in West Texas they love it, and they go, "Oh, you should hate this." It's like, no, it generates so many jobs. People that would leave their small towns in West Texas state because they can go to the junior college and learn all this stuff and these new technologies, and
Hmm.
dying cities were coming back, and it's like, who knew Texas? You know what I mean? Renewable
Yeah.
energy thing.
Well, and a few years back, we remember when Texas had severe cold weather and many people died because the gas pipes froze up. Now they've really solved their reliability problem in Texas because they built a bunch of solar and wind. Like that's how they did it. And you even hear this again from the officials in Texas admitting that like, yeah, like that's we built more renewable energy and that works better in those extreme environments. And so now we do not expect any reliability issues like as like they have before. So that's the thing. Like it's unfortunate how politicized a lot of this has become, but if just like basic economics, it just makes a ton of sense for smaller communities makes a ton of sense. I interviewed someone for a different project in Michigan, in a small city where they brought in a wind farm, and now they're able to fund their schools. And they had no other way to do that, right? They didn't have there's not a big city, there wasn't a big industry they could tax or something like that. They brought in these wind turbines. Not only do they now have good access to all of this electricity and good kind of reliable infrastructure built there, but they have property taxes to fund their schools and their roads. So there's a million reasons to do this, and the only reasons not to are to protect the profits of these companies.
Yeah, driving your car while looking in the rearview mirror is not a good prescription for the future.
Right.
So, when this film came out, how was it accepted? Where was it seen? And what was the feedback and what was the follow through? Did it have the impact that you had been looking for?
Yeah, I think it started to, but we're still rolling it out. We had the premiere back at the end of April, where we went to the Varsity Theater in Des Moines, Iowa. It's a 225 seat theater, which when the local groups there recommended that theater, I was like, oh, that's a lot of people. Like that's a big theater. We should do a smaller theater just to make sure we get the turnout that we want. They wanted to do the 225 seat theater and it sold out, right? We ran out of tickets. And so that was really great just, to have that experience. We had a panel there with multiple people who were actually featured in the documentary to talk more about it. So we saw already some interest kind of come out of that, where people are getting more involved with those local organizations who are actually doing the work on the ground. A month later, we did a Sioux City screening and kind of had their own premiere up in Sioux City, which also went really well. I think we're expecting 30 people. We had over 50 people. We ran out of chairs. It was a similar situation. The next screening of us right now is the Iowa Independent Film Festival, where it was an official selection, and so we're excited to have it there. And then we also have some others on the horizon. So for us, it wasn't that we were going to drop it once and then it was going to automatically change everything. Though it would be great if that happened. What our real goal here is, through a series of screenings across the state of Iowa, having local organizers at those screenings, so that when people watch this, we all watch documentaries, right? And we get frustrated, but sometimes they end and there's nothing we can do, and that we just feel powerless. In this case, people are going to watch this in community with their neighbors, and then there's going to be an organizer there who can say, here are the steps you can take right now. Here's how you contact this company. Here's how you get involved in our long-term organizing efforts. And for us, that was always the real goal. is not just to generally spread awareness, but to actually get people more engaged and involved in a meaningful way.
I think I've found that to be the film is almost an excuse to get together, because once they see the film, you're sitting next to somebody you never met and you start talking. It's like, okay, now here's where the real action happens. It's a beautiful thing to, stir things up and get people thinking. It's like, I didn't know that. And it's like, well, let me tell you something you don't know. It's like, wow. So hopefully that will be the follow through. Now, you did interview the former legal counsel for MidAmerica.
Yeah, so I can't remember what his exact title was, but he previously worked at MidAmerican Energy and has since kind of switched over and works with the Iowa Environmental Council, Steve Geyer. And so it was interesting throughout the documentary to hear a little bit more of his perspective of being on the inside, and also just being able to speak really candidly about, because to you and me, we might say, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would the company choose to do this? And he can just kind of lay it out and say, like, oh, because of money. Like, it was one way was cheaper. It was cheaper to, not actually care about the pollution in a meaningful way. And so that's what they did.
He would be an interesting person to do a follow-up with too.
He's great.
That's really great. So are your films going to be available more widely? Can people see it on PBS, or do you have a Kinema account, or do you have some other way that somebody sees this and says, well, I want to see that film?
Yeah, so iwasdirtysecret.com is the best spot to get on the list for more information. Right now, as of our recording, it's not available to stream. And the reason for that is because all of those community screenings are still happening. And so we want to give them the space to do that. But we intend towards the end of 2025 to have it available online for everyone. And this will be something that people will be able to access for free. So in the meantime, you can go to iwasdirtysecret.com and folks can just sign up for the email list, and they'll get those updates when it's available. And for folks who are in or near Iowa, certainly there are screenings that you can find more information about on that website or on our email list. Or for folks in other places who want to host their own screening, we're also providing this to anybody who wants to host a community screening. There's no cost. There's nothing like that. We're not trying to license it or anything. Our goal is just, if you have a group of people that you think would be interested in having this conversation, and this is going to help you have that conversation, then reach out to us on the website. We'll get you a screener. We've got a whole toolkit guide that has some kind of sample questions that you can ask, and just make it as easy as we can for you, so that more people can see this.
That's fabulous. So you mentioned that you were up in Michigan doing something with wind turbines. I guess you're kind of moving into the space where it's all about renewable energy, or which is more positive than pollutants and old school. What is up ahead for you?
Yeah. Really, my goal is to continue to work with different Midwest organizations who are focused on clean energy or sustainability or environmental work in general. We're just in a moment right now where, yes, we have these immense federal challenges, but it's just never been easier to make the transition to clean energy. Even with incentives that have gone away at the federal level, it continues. We just know, like, from a basic economics perspective, it makes a ton of sense for the companies. We know, and for the ratepayers, we know from a small community perspective, it makes a ton of sense. I've interviewed with farmers who, lease a very small portion of their land, the worst portion of their farmland. And now, because of that, they're generating enough revenue that they get to keep their farm and not sell it to one of these companies that owns, half the farms in America. So I just think that my goal is just to continue to work with folks like that who, maybe you wouldn't expect would be the big clean energy supporters, right? It's not always what people think of when they think of, say, a farmer. But there's a lot of folks out there just who are really embracing it and who are reaping the benefits. And I think that the more we can do to spread that word and get that message out there, the more effective we will be as a whole in getting folks to understand the need to transition.
Yeah, I would think keep the money close to home. So if you're, burning something that took 1 billion years to create and just polluting, and of course people get power, but it's short-lived. But having, a wind turbine on your farm, you can keep the family farm. you can pay your taxes, you spend the money at the grocery store and go down to the coffee shop and, get your car repaired and, go to the local football game and,
Yeah.
it keeps the wheel turning in a positive way. And it doesn't just, it seems like a lot of the money has been extracted up to the top where it doesn't, once there, it's kind of gone. It's someplace else. It's not available to the rest of us peons who have
That's
to
exactly right.
pay the
And
price for being poisoned, you know.
hmm
Well, I really congratulate you on taking this on as your mission, this whole area. Uh, it's never been easy to be a documentary filmmaker. It's as difficult now as it ever was. So you knew it, you wanted it, you jumped on that horse, and just what you're doing is really important. And I hope that we can talk with you again and find out the progress of how this is working out. Because what's best for the people is what's the best outcome. And as it currently is, the status quo is not working as it should.
that's exactly right. No, I appreciate you saying that, and yeah, I appreciate this opportunity to talk more about the project.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. You be well. And best wishes on your next project, and we'll be interested in hearing about that when it kind of comes together.
That sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Trevor.